The perfect ways of building a successful marriage. Marriage isn't a bed of roses but rather hard work, discipline, and fight, and there is no accidental fulfillment in marriage. Don't expect a happily built marriage of love and peace without putting up a fight. You must work it out the same way you always work out your salvation, with fear and trembling, because every successful marriage you behold today takes a great deal of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, cumbered with maturity and experience, to build and sustained. Building a successful marriage often constitutes both carnality and spirituality, and wisdom is always applicable due to some irritating and foolish intels it always constitutes. However, the place of prayers can't be neglected while building a successful and solidify marriage, because the easiest way to remote or cause the heart of your partner to succumb unto your biting is prayers. As it often said, the family that prays together always stays together. Nevertheless, if your marriage is already at civil war, I will advise you digest every bit of this article and impact the content into your life, and am very certain the head and founder of your marriage, our Lord Jesus Christ, shall uphold, healed, and restored back the backbone of your marriage. The perfect ways of building a successful marriage. One of the unfortunate incidents that will wreck your happily married life is when you neglect the importance of prayers and power of self-control. Though you're now married, but how often do you pray? Yes, you have been married for years, but how often do you fast and wait upon the Lord with your life partner? Most often we assume that once we got married there is no need for praying and fasting. We seem to get occupied by career pursuit while neglecting the most important aspect in our lives, which is how to keep upgrading and building our marriage unto perfection. The importance of fasting and praying can't be overemphasized while building a successful marriage. It doesn't matter the level of your spiritual acquaintance. Please read this part. Any moment you begin to slack behind in fasting and praying, the love bond in your marriage and grace of self-control will certainly diminish. Praying and fasting is a spiritual act of crucifying your mortal flesh or mentality unto subjection of the Spirit. It will empower you to tame your tongue, honor and respect your spouse. However, marriage is not rosy, but at the same time it is. It takes understanding to make it glowing through praying and fasting. The degree of not hiding anything from your spouse, whether past or present, or tends to regret over the kind of spouse you marry, or trying to read the mind, study the character, submissive, respective, and been honorable to your spouse, always needs spiritual support before it can be activated. Trying to know what your husband/wife likes or detests, or telling him/her what you don't like or likes, can only be upheld by spiritual support. I mean, just look around you and tell me which successful business investment, politicians, pastors, footballers, musical artists, movie actors, or government who doesn't depend in spiritual aid in this end time. There is need to read marriage books and go to marriage seminars in order to upgrade yourself and acquired knowledge about marriage, but before all these self-acquired knowledge can be activated, it always needs spiritual backing. Either you take or you leave it. A case study. A sister once asked, "Sir, what act can be taken in order to abate a husband, pastor, from beating his wife?" The response to the question read thus: "It's unscriptural and unacceptable for pastor to lay his hand or maltreat his beloved wife. It's outrageous, pathetic, and a demonic act for a husband to beat his dear wife. Moreover, from the series of teachings we often heard in the church is enough for we Christians to build a successful marriage. We can't just be listening to all this divine counseling and refuse to implement them. All the biblical teachings been taught in your church are perfectly set up by the pastor in order to revive our Christian lives. Those teachings are vital, and I believe the reason why we are not activating the entire gospel sermon been impacted upon us is due to lack of spiritual brokenness, and probably due to wrong church. However, I would also plead, if your church is not impacting any righteous fruits in your life, I advise you quit that church and sort for another place of fellowship, because you can't build a successful marriage while fellowshipping in the wrong church. You will be empty and lack spiritual gifts and brokenness. Lack of spiritual brokenness is exactly the reason why many Christian homes has turned into a civil war. Yes, at this moment you have read countless books on marriage, honored several marriage seminars, and acquired series of marital knowledge, and promise to treat your future wife as a queen. Perhaps at this moment you can cook perfectly well and also perfect in laundering, neatness, and also promise to respect, submissive and treat your future husband as a king. But fortunately, it's also required spiritual backing through praying and fasting before those proposed act can be activated in your marriage. You might takes 50 years to acquire all the needed knowledge about marriage and cultivate the act of studying one another, but there is need for a serious spiritual force or backing in order to activate those knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, because by strength, wisdom and knowledge shall no man prevail.